All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. This is another weekly, future-focused weekly update, keeping you ahead of the game at the intersection of business technology and human experience. I'm looking forward to this one. I always look forward to these. I am spicy, though, this week. So if I'm more energetic than usual, it's been let's just say, challenging week nonetheless. But and all that to say, that only adds to the energy that I bring to some of the topics that came up. As always, I would encourage anybody who listens to this. I love hearing from you, so do send along the things you encounter. Love answering things and reflecting and responding to things that matter to you. But really looking forward to this. So today I've got 5 things that came across my desk. Some have me really up in arms more than others, but all of them, I think, just mission critical. So as we talk about this, the 5 that I'm going to get into is kind of this whole concept of the end of remote work and what that means and why this is coming up again for me. A lot of things that I've seen that were shared with me around Gen Z and millennial loyalty. So lots to say about generational stereotypes as a whole. But anyway, so there's that one. The law behind, there's been some recent events in AI and deepfakes and the legal ramifications. Interesting topic here with this. So talk about that. Resurrecting a dead loved one. And you'll see where I'm going with this one with AI. And then the LinkedIn workplace learning report. So with that, let's just jump straight into it because I am tight for time today. So I want to make sure I have enough to talk about it. The end of remote work. Now, where this came out is there's a couple things going into it. So the first one is there is a growing number of articles and I'm seeing this trend in general around senior leadership in companies really, really pushing hard to have people come back into the office full time, and even more than just, hey, a couple days a week, but really pushing hard to this 5 days in the office, X type of, from this hour to this hour type of thing. And then this week in particular, I've had multiple conversations with people who at their own company, they were hired in as a remote employee and are now feeling the squeeze of, are you going to move? If you're going to stay here, that's something you're going to need to figure out. And can I just say, what on earth is going on with this? Now, I mean, I actually think I know what's going on with this. I think it's just being missed in a lot of the narratives with this, is that I understand that there's a lot of just chaos in the world right now, and I get it. And I feel like people are really shaken up. The number of conversations I have every week with people who, I just had a conversation this week, we were talking about, why are easy things so hard right now? There's a tension in the air. People are stressed. Things are changing. It feels like the general sense is we just can't grip onto anything. And I think what happens, just observing human behavior through my career, is that when things feel out of control, we like to try and take control with things that are familiar. And so this is me, rather than just like raging against some of these senior leaders making what I think are ridiculously foolish moves, recognizing that I feel like there's just this sense of lack of control and people are trying to control what they think they can control. And if somehow we just bring people back into the office, we'll get back to the good old days, or things will start to make sense again because what was unfamiliar is now more familiar. And so I understand that there is this pressure and this tendency for us to do this. But to any of the senior leaders or any professional out there who are in this camp of, maybe life will just get easier if we get people back into what we feel is a regular routine, please challenge your thinking on this. The data is so clear on this. People are performing better. They are more engaged. They are more satisfied with their work the more flexibility they have. And now I understand that doesn't just mean remote work or not remote work, but what it means is the more opportunity we give people to have autonomy and control over the way they spend their time and how they get their work done, and trust that they can do it well, the better they do. And when we send messages to employees that we just need to control how you get your work done, it just sends a message. We don't trust you. We don't think you're, and whether you realize it or not, these people I've talked to who now are like, I was hired in to do this. We've been doing a great job. Now I'm being pressured to do this stuff. They don't even want to show up to work anymore. So if you think you are going to improve company performance by boxing people in to a one size fits all approach to getting work done, you will fail. There is no other way to put it. You will fail. And the very problems you are trying to solve through these methods are actually going to exacerbate them exponentially. And even the people who stick around, and I get it, the attitude, I've even talked to folks where sometimes the attitude can be, well, if that's how they feel, then they can go. But the problem is, there are lots of people, that's a very arrogant statement to make, because that's a statement made from the position of, it's not my problem. And people are all in a position where they, even if they wanted to, have the ability to make that decision. So what you're going to end up with is a whole lot of people who are resentful, disgruntled, and pissed off because they know that they've been able to perform their job well before. And now, for some reason that someone somewhere made, that's being taken away from them, nobody is going to perform well under those conditions. And so I would actually be more concerned about the people who end up sticking around than the ones who leave. And in fact, the ones who leave are probably the ones who are most capable, equipped, and able to help you through this tough season of uncertainty. And so by closing the door on those folks, they walk out, you're going to find yourself in a death spiral. And I'm not saying, as a leader, if it's your company and you're going, but this is just what I'm comfortable with, I'm not saying you don't have the authority and autonomy to set boundaries. I'm just saying they're short-sighted boundaries to set, and they're not going to get you what you think you actually are going to achieve. So I'm not going to keep going on this one, because I literally was so mad about this one this week when I talked to like the fifth person who is now in this state of, I don't even know if I want to be here anymore. I don't even know how I'm going to, but I can't go anywhere. I can't find a different job. So I'm probably just going to check the box type of a thing. And I get it. I completely get it. And I just would say, if you're a senior leader or any leader, if you're in any management position and you are thinking the way to solve the chaos around you is to force people into conformity that is comfortable for you, it will not work. So enough said on that. Gosh, I'm feisty today. Okay, so let's move on to this. This one's only going to get me even more amped up. Here we go. So a whole bunch of articles, several were shared with me around this whole Gen Z and millennial loyalty, and the younger generations, they're just not loyal to companies anymore. And they just want to be able to leave and do whatever they want and find freedom and purpose in the work that they do. And they want no accountability. Now, let me just say, there is some truth in some of this stuff. Now, I think generational stereotypes, if you've listened to any of my stuff before, you know how much I hate this, because some generation does not define you. You're going to find diversity within every generation. But as we look at the stages of life of people, is it a little more understandable that younger generations who are still figuring out what they want to do with their life is struggling within companies that have very restrictive and confining boxes? Duh. Like, of course they're struggling with this. Then stack on top of it that company behavior has changed. There's so much emphasis when we look about loyalty on the focus of employee behavior. Well, they're not loyal anymore. They just want this. They just want that. How about look in the mirror at how companies are acting today? You used to be able to go to a company and trust that your job was stable and that you'd be able to retire there and things would be okay. Now, it doesn't matter who you are. There is so much instability. You could be the best employee in the company and be ripped out of the organization on a dime because someone somewhere just made a short-term decision that it looked like, hey, this will be good on the balance sheet. So let's not ignore that companies are not really showing up for their employees either. And so to say, well, we've completely changed the rules of the game, and wow, look at that. They're not being loyal to this. How about look in the mirror and go, what could we be doing to create an environment and a culture that encourages and inspires loyalty? Doesn't demand it. I mean, come on. You don't get loyalty from people by screaming at them and telling them they need to be loyal to you. You do it by creating an environment that makes them want to be there, that makes them want to stay. And when you do things like in the previous one, where you say, I know you're killing it and you're rocking it and you're adding all this value, but I just need you to show up into this building and sit in a cubicle from 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And then you wonder why people go, really? You know what? Maybe this isn't the right place for me. When you have people in organizations where their role is so limited and they go, I want to grow my skills, I want to develop, I want to be able to do other things. And we go, well, unfortunately, the way our HR system is set up, you must do this. And these are the only channels that we have. And these are the only opportunities that we have within our organization. And compensation is capped at this if you're an internal hire. So we're only going to be able to give you slightly more than a cost of living raise, even though we're asking you to do 3 times the work. And we know you're on all these special projects, but unfortunately, we can't compensate you for that. So we're just going to call that stretch opportunity. Like, you look at that environment and then you say, gee, I wonder why people aren't loyal. Come on. Let's look at this holistically. And then also, yeah, are there issues with individuals? Okay, let's focus not on generations. Are there issues with certain individuals who may have attitudes of entitlement? Sure. Are there issues with people who think they're better at things than they are? Absolutely. Are there people who think they should just get what they want and there shouldn't be any accountability? Of course there are. But to operate an organization based on those exceptions and think that you can just ignore it and point the finger at that and go, well, there you go. See, people are like that. Well, first of all, one, people aren't like that. The number of people who are so dedicated and committed and will go to great lengths. And then at some point, after the company has squeezed the blood out of them, they finally, maybe if they're in a position, have the bravery and the courage to go, I just can't do it anymore and I'm going to move on. To call that disloyalty to me is disgusting. So with this one, I think there is so much opportunity for us to do more to help people see and think differently about what their careers could look like, and to also not look at leaving a company as some sort of disservice. I have conversations with people on my teams all the time about the fact that I understand that you have aspirations and there are skills and things that I may not be able to accommodate or account for here. And I will do everything I can within my power to maximize that for you. But there's no shame and there's no guilt that you should ever feel if after you do this analysis of what's really important to you and I say, unfortunately, I can't meet that here, that you should somehow feel that I'm going to think negatively of you to go do something else. In fact, I'm going to be the cheerleader for you and say, you know what? Awesome for you. You had these skills. I didn't have an opportunity to maximize it. It really sucks that I didn't, but I want you to go do that. And I'm going to cheerlead you on. And you know what? I want to create an environment that makes you know if at some point that changes, I would love to have you come back. And you don't need to apologize to me one bit for the fact that you went and got what you needed and you did it. And now timing's aligned. And now I can welcome you back into the home. Because I can tell you right now, you treat people like crap. You guilt trip them. You make them feel like, oh, you're just disloyal. You just need to obey and be in service to this organization. Look at all we've done for you. Believe me, when they leave, they ain't coming back. And I think that's one of the things that in our short-sighted nature, we often just think about what's right in front of our nose instead of the longer-term implications of this. Never mind all like the other things, like I said before. You're young in your career. You haven't figured out what you want to do. You're not sure. Companies aren't great at internal mobility. So what's the easiest thing you do? You apply to a job outside. You don't make enough because you got hired in an entry-level position, and the 4% raises or 2% raises you've been getting with the possibility of a 7% raise if you get a promotion taking on twice the work doesn't really sound great when you could go get a 25% raise. Like, never mind all that stuff. Enough said. Okay, moving on. I told you I was fired up today. All right. So this one to me is more of a tragic thing that I think we really need to pay attention to. So I'm probably going to calm down a little bit more on this one. My heart absolutely breaks for some of the things that I'm starting to see with the abuse of AI technology, especially among youth. There's a number of things coming out now where kids are using deep fake technology to manipulate images and make their peers do inappropriate and just I don't think I need to say more than this for you to start to figure out where this is going, what kids are doing to other kids in terms of the way they're bullying and doing some of this stuff with deep fake technology, putting them in compromising positions, putting them in, you know, uh, let's just say things kids shouldn't be doing. It doesn't surprise me. First of all, one, it doesn't surprise me at all because kids can be awful. And I've said this many times before that AI exacerbates and accelerates what's already there. So, undisciplined kind of kids left to their own device without parental oversight of, hey, what are you doing? Like, how do we actually instill things that are just not acceptable in general? Now you give these kids a superpower that allows them to do things to kids that can be so traumatic and so irreversible. Well, nothing's irreversible, but so traumatic, so heartbreaking, in exploiting other peers. And I don't even think we can begin to understand the long-term social and psychological consequences of this. I mean, it was bad enough, when I was growing up, if somebody like, faked a picture of you by clipping your head and putting it on a magazine, but like everybody knew it was fake and it was mean and it hurt your feelings, but it was obvious it was fake. Now we can actually create things that make it seem like people are doing things that they didn't even actually do, but it's so real that no one else knows it's fake. No one else goes, well, maybe they did do it, and it's just tragic. And I think the reason this is on my radar so much is one, and then I'll get to the legal side because you're like, what does this have to do with the law? Parents, anybody, and not just parents, guardians, if you are not taking the time to disciple your kids about what is okay and what is harmful in general, this AI is going to just make things exponentially worse. So my call to action is if you have any involvement in the lives of children, please take some time and talk to them about this stuff. Talk to them about bullying and talk to them about what you can do with this AI and talk to them about some of the long-term consequences and how they may be doing things that just seem like ha ha ha, ha, it's a prank that may be scarring someone for the rest of their life. Because kids, and I say this because I was one, kids are dumb. We don't understand things. We don't have context. We don't understand. I'm not a kid anymore. They don't have all this stuff and they need grown-ups to help them think about this. But what's really concerning, and the reason this is on my radar right now, is as I dug into some of this tragic stuff that's happening, in many cases, there's almost nothing that can be done about it legally because it's fake. It's not real. So a lot of the laws in place make it very hard to actually put accountability in place for this. And I think this is an area that the law is going to have to catch up really quick. And this isn't just well, let's just legislate our way out of it, but we are going to have to say, hey, we're going to have some real teeth around this in general is just wrong. So it doesn't matter whether you do it with artificial intelligence and what you created is real or not. You did this to a person. And the action in and of itself, regardless of the means by which you do it, does not matter. And you're still accountable for this. So I really hope if you're someone who's involved or has a voice or anything with this, that you use your voice to drive this forward and try and help changes. And I think we're going to see in 2024, the law is going to have to catch up, because I mean, I knew the second this deep fake stuff started becoming just so easy and so accessible, I'm like, gosh, I just know how dumb I was as a kid. And, without the right people in your life to help disciple you and help you discern the implications and think through like how harmful this is and hold you accountable with this, we're going to see more of this. And it makes me sad. And I really hope that we can get in front of this. I hope that those of you out there who, have a voice, have influence in this space, can do more about it. And probably all of us have influence and a voice in this in some capacity, uh, because we all are involved in the lives of others. And it's not just kids. I mean, that's the thing. We're going to see more of this stuff coming into political season. We're going to see more of this stuff just in when people get angry with people, they want to hurt them. That's our natural kind of response. And it's not okay to do it. And AI is only going to make it easier to seemingly harmlessly, in our minds, it's less work, it's easier, and oh, it's not real, but it is real. And I think that's the thing with some of this stuff is we often are not taking seriously some of the stuff that's happening around artificial intelligence and going, well, wait a minute, what are the implications and how do we make sure we mitigate risk? So that actually gets me to my next one, which I've got a lot of mixed feelings about this. So if you saw the headline for this, I said it was AI resurrection. And if you've listened to my content for a while, I've been saying this was coming even back when people went, nah, it's never going to get there. So there was a Taiwanese dad. His name was Tino Bao, I believe. He's a musician. And what he did was he used artificial intelligence to clone his deceased daughter. His daughter, tragic story. She died at 2022. And he used 3 sentences that he had from a video call that his daughter had with her mom. And he used those 3 sentences to train AI and train it in her voice. And then he used her voice to have it sing happy birthday. It basically said, I miss you. The daughter, and I use air quotes if you're not watching this, the daughter said, I miss you, and then sang her mom happy birthday. But it wasn't her daughter because it was AI. And now if you think this is like, oh, well, only the most advanced people can do this kind of stuff. I mean, I've got the software on my computer. I have a cloned version of my voice. I could make it say whatever. If I wanted it to sing a song or say a bunch of things, I could do it now. I could take any voice that I wanted and clone it and have it say things. So this isn't hard to do, but I think this goes back to this whole, I wrestled with this so much because I thought, there's a part of me that's like, I see why you would do this. In theory, it sounds so sweet. But it's also in some ways, I'm like, it's also so hollow because it's not your daughter that's saying this. You manufactured a fake version of your daughter to do this. And while maybe hearing her voice do this, there's a hollowness to it. And I think this goes back to, we think AI is not real, but yet it plays in these very real spaces. And I don't know, well, no, I know for a fact, we have not even started to experience the fallout and the implications of when we start substituting saccharin and artificial sweetener for sugar, like, and that's a separate, but when we start doing that in real life and we start going, wow, like we're manufacturing people to avoid grief, to get out of some of this stuff. And again, I have mixed feelings on it because I totally understand where this comes from. I'd be really actually interested to hear how it was met, how it was received by the mom and even the dad in kind of doing it. I mean, I think I can see if you're the one creating it, feeling like you're involved in creating something meaningful. So, I can see the dad not necessarily having this thing, but as I think about the recipient of it, I can see it having this initial feeling of like, it's really cool, but yet it's also really hollow. And might that leave you only hungry for more of something that you actually can't ever get because it's not there. There's nothing behind it. And so I think this is just yet another example of, as we're seeing AI start to pick up and we're starting to manufacture and replicate things that were historically always very distinct to. And so, okay, slight pivot on this. Um, I think of an example of this, and this is where I spend some time reflecting on these things. So that I watch a lot of Disney stuff with my kids, and we were watching this thing of, I've never been there. Long story, funny story behind that. I was supposed to go once, and then because I was a stupid kid, going back to before, I didn't get to go. But anyway, there's this in the Haunted Mansion. There's this lady who is her head and her voice is in the crystal ball, and it speaks or it sings. I can't remember what it is. But anyway, I was watching one of the Disney things, and her daughter and her granddaughter go to the Haunted Mansion sometimes just to see it, to see her mom. And she talked about how it brings a lot of comfort to her because she sees her mom and her voice and it brings her back and all this other stuff. And so I think that is what would drive somebody to do something like this and go, I want to see them. I want to feel them. I want to hear them again. But I think where I see it different for that person at Disney is what they're experiencing was real at some point. There was a point at which that's real. And it's a photograph of something that's real. It's a thing of the past, but it was real at some point. And so I think that may bring a different level of comfort, a different level of, satisfaction than if you're like, I'm listening to my daughter sing me happy birthday, but I know it's not really my daughter. And it's actually not even really her voice. It's an AI copy of her voice doing something that she actually never did. And I just don't know. And that's why I'd be actually really curious. Where does that leave somebody? And when we start messing with these things, what are the implications of it? And how does it start to, but it's not rare, just so you know, this is not a rare thing. In fact, I looked into it and there's a company startup. They've done this for more than 600 families in the last 7 months. And I'm like, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I said 2 years ago or something like that we're going to start seeing this. We're going to be bringing the dead back to life with AI, and we're going to be doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And I get where it comes from. I get our desire to not deal with the grief and pain of life in a broken, fallen world. Yet at the same time, trying to remanufacture for ourselves what we think is going to soothe us. And I know my biblical worldview plays a big role in how I look at this, but I think even setting that aside, I think the emptiness of some of this stuff where we're like, well, we'll just fill this hole with this thing that we manufactured that I hope and genuinely think was going to satisfy me. I think we're going to find you're going to be left thirsty. You're going to be left hungry because it didn't actually meet the need. So more to come on this. I think this is just the beginning. I mean, this was just voice. It's going to be video. It's going to be images. It's going to be humanoid robot versions of dead loved. I mean, we're only seeing the beginning of this, and whether that excites you or terrifies you, I think we are going to have a lot of stuff that we're going to have to wrestle through as we move into this new and wild, different age. All right. Little less heavy closing on the LinkedIn workplace learning report. And you might go, workplace learning report, I'm not a learning professional. Why do I care about this? There is a lot of insight. If you have not checked out this report, I think there's a lot of insight here for business professionals, for learning professionals, and just professionals in general. Going back to what I was talking about, where I was a little more feisty on the loyalty thing. How you care for and develop your people matters big time. Big time, big time, big time. It is a core component of your business strategy. And so learning about what really do people want. And I think what's interesting is some of these things that came out of this report very much go back to this company loyalty thing where it's like, well, companies aren't delivering on some of these things that the report is showing people care deeply about. And then we go, well, why aren't people staying? Why aren't they satisfied in their job? It's like, well, this report reveals some of these things. So it was interesting. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You can download it, or if you go to my LinkedIn, you'll find I posted about it multiple times over the last week. It was just released. You'll see that, and you can see some of my posts where I unpack some of this stuff. But some of the biggest things that were interesting coming out of this report is I have hope for where we're going, in that there is a growing, one of the things that stood out was there's a growing influence of learning and development within an organization. And you might go, well, that's great if you're a learning professional. But I actually think it speaks broader to a positive trend we're seeing around the recognition that developing and caring for your employees matters. And senior leaders are starting to take note of this and going, hey, we need to figure this out. Now, I think the challenge is, just like we tend to jump to short-term solutions, we can end up going, okay, so like what? We just buy a subscription to blah, blah, blah. We just offer it and that's going to fix it. Like, no, which is why we need really thoughtful, critical thinking people in roles to go, well, let's actually understand, what do people need? Because it's more than just an active license to LinkedIn Learning or Udemy. It's bigger than that. But the fact there's even a greater recognition, hey, this should be part of the conversation. I think that's good for businesses. I also think it's good for employees. So if you're listening to this, regardless of where you sit, I think that should be encouraging to you to know that, hey, businesses are recognizing this, which means things are going to change. Now, which direction they change in, well, that's still up for debate. Something else that was interesting coming out of this is the growing demand for personalization. And I think this is only tied to, this goes back to what I was saying before of the end of the remote work thing. Employees more and more are going to demand personalization, not just in their learning, but in their work, in their environments, in everything. That's just where culture is right now. When you have AI, not just AI, but technology, when you have a life around you that pretty much personalizes and adapts itself to your unique needs, this whole idea of, well, we're not going to do that for you, you just have to fit in this box, does not work. And that's where I'm saying, well, you're seeing this in the LinkedIn report. This has implications on everything, which is why things like, well, how do we just make everybody do the same thing and then be happy about it? You're not going to. You won't. It's not going to work, because this demand is just growing at an exponential pace, and it's growing everywhere. The demand for their development, the demand for their work environment, the demand for all this stuff, which, yeah, you might be a senior leader and go, well, what a bunch of spoiled, entitled, whatever. It's like, no, this is just where we are culturally and societally. And you can either cross your arms and be a curmudgeon and go, well, I'm not participating in this. Okay, well, go ahead and let me know how that goes for you. But this also doesn't mean that you just have to cave into, oh, well, people just get whatever they want. We all know what happens when you spoil a child. They don't turn out too great. So this isn't about just going, well, I guess we either just have to give them everything we want or dig our heels in and go, I'm just going to stay here. I think there's a middle ground. And I spent a lot of time talking and working with people about how do we define what that middle ground is. But the report shows this ain't going away. This is only going to grow. Personalization is only going to be in higher demand. Something else was this, I think, really discouraging, and I think it speaks to some of the other stuff that comes up, is there's a decrease in full implementation of stuff. We're not seeing things through to fruition. And my concern with this is, again, it's related to workplace learning, but it's also tied to a broader trend I'm seeing where we're moving so fast. We start things up and then we don't see it through because we're already on to the next thing. And we just go. And we're quick to come up with great ideas and come up with plans for this. And then, well, we never really end up figuring out, well, did we actually follow through and did it have an impact? It's like, we're too busy. We got to move on. This is concerning for me. And I've talked a lot about the need for more stillness and slowing down and intentional reflection on what we're doing and why, and being purposeful in what we're doing instead of just doing things because we can or people want it. And that's a concerning trend. I think we need to see that start to move, because if we don't, the implications of it, if it's going down there, it's going down everywhere. And I see this in other reports as well. And so I think this is something that, to anybody watching and listening, I talk a lot about the need to be still and to pause and to reflect. And this data point seems to only further validate this. The other two things, and then I'm going to wrap because I'm running out of time here, is one, I'm really excited to see that there is a greater opportunity area that is starting to be seen. I still think there's a huge opportunity here, but actually digging into how do we start to deconstruct and analyze what a skill is, and really how do we identify what actually makes somebody good at something. And the hope for both employers and employees is this is starting to progress in meaningful ways. It's good for business because you can actually start to understand what do we really need in our organization and how do we get that in people and how do we bring people along for the ride to hopefully create an organization where people are more loyal, they feel fulfilled and compelled to want to do great work for you. But it's also great for employees who may be struggling going, gosh, I don't know, up from down. And what I used to do last year isn't relevant this year. And I don't even know where to put my energy and time. I think this deeper analytics into what this means and the deconstruction of it is going to help people on both sides. But again, it's going to require us to slow down and think critically, not just charge forward. The last thing is, as you can imagine, this report only validated what I always talk about in all of these things. AI is in the air we breathe. It has been for a long time, but it is growing exponentially and it's not going anywhere. So just like the person who goes, well, I'm just going to stay where I am. My company's run this way forever and I'm not going to change. If you're one of those people when it comes to artificial intelligence and going, the way I've always done things is good enough, I'm not going to shift that. I'm not going to adapt. Go for it and let me know how that goes for you. I don't think you're going to be pleased with the results. So with that, but I don't think that needs to intimidate you. I mean, it might be a little intimidating, but I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's possible to move forward. And I would encourage everybody to figure out what that path forward, take the time to reflect on what that path forward looks like for you, put the time and the work into it, and there's no shortcutting it. That's the short answer with this. There is no shortcutting the hard work that goes into it. So with that, I got to wrap so I can jump to something else here. Hopefully you found this helpful, encouraging, challenging, whatever it is. But if nothing else, my goal is to make you think and think critically so that you can be better prepared for the future of where things are going. So with that, happy Friday, and we will see you on the other side.